Avicenna was not born into a world that made it easy for thinkers to thrive. He came into life in the year 980, in a small village near Bukhara, a place where the winds carried the whispers of traders, scholars, and mystics from all directions. His full name was Abu Ali al-Husayn ibn Abd Allah ibn Sina, but history would remember him by a single name, Avicenna. To some, he was the greatest physician of the medieval world. To others, a philosopher who rivaled Aristotle himself. But at his core, Avicenna was a seeker, not of mere facts, but of truth, and the order that reason could bring to the chaos of existence. From the earliest days, he showed signs of a mind that refused to settle. As a boy, he devoured books on logic, astronomy, mathematics, and Islamic jurisprudence before most children his age had mastered the basics of reading and writing. He didn't just want to know what something was, he wanted to know why it was, and how it could be known. By the time he was a teenager, he had memorized the Quran, mastered the works of ancient philosophers, and begun studying medicine, not merely as a craft, but as a way of understanding the delicate balance between the body and the soul. His medical genius was so evident that at just 17 years old, he was called upon to treat the ruler of Bukhara, who was suffering from an illness that had baffled every other physician. Avicenna diagnosed and cured him, not by relying solely on traditional remedies, but by combining observation, experimentation, and a deep understanding of the human constitution. In return, he was granted access to the royal library, a treasure trove of knowledge containing rare works from Greece, Persia, India, and beyond. It was here that Avicenna's mind bloomed fully, absorbing centuries of wisdom and blending them into something uniquely his own. But Avicenna's true genius was not in memorizing or repeating the thoughts of others. It was in his ability to weave them into a greater tapestry. He took Aristotle's logic, Plato's metaphysics, the medical knowledge of Galen, the spiritual insights of Islamic theology, and the rational clarity of mathematics, and fused them into a coherent worldview. For Avicenna, reason was not the enemy of faith, nor was faith the enemy of science. They were two wings of the same bird, lifting the human mind toward truth. One of his most striking contributions to philosophy was his theory of the soul. To him, the soul was not a mere byproduct of the body, nor was it something trapped within it like a prisoner in a cage. The soul, Avicenna argued, was immaterial, eternal, and capable of existing independently from the body. To prove this, he presented one of the most remarkable thought experiments in history, the floating man. Imagine, Avicenna said, that you are created fully formed, floating in the air, with no sensory input, no sight, no touch, no sound, no smell, no taste. You have no perception of your body. And yet, you would still be aware of your own existence. This, he claimed, showed that self-awareness does not depend on the body, and that the soul has an existence of its own. Over 1,000 years later, philosophers and neuroscientists still wrestle with the depth of this idea. But Avicenna was not only a metaphysician, he was a master of logic. For him, logic was the foundation of all knowledge, the tool by which we separate truth from error. He saw it as a universal method, not confined to any particular culture or religion. To think well was to live well, because a mind clouded by faulty reasoning was like a physician prescribing poison instead of medicine. He expanded Aristotle's system of logic, making it more precise and applicable, introducing new distinctions between concepts, definitions, and propositions that would influence scholars for centuries. And yet, his rationalism did not make him cold or detached from the human condition. Avicenna understood that knowledge without purpose was empty. His monumental work, the Canon of Medicine, was not merely a catalogue of diseases and treatments. It was an expression of his belief that the healer's duty was to restore harmony between body and body, body and soul, soul and world. This text became the medical Bible of Europe and the Islamic world for over 500 years, shaping the way generations of doctors approached their craft. Avicenna's life, however, was far from peaceful. He lived in a time of political turmoil, when kingdoms rose and fell with alarming speed. As a result, he often found himself moving from court to court, serving as a physician, advisor, and scholar to rulers, some enlightened, some tyrannical. His honesty and independence often made him enemies among the powerful. At times, his knowledge was seen not as a gift, but as a threat. He was imprisoned more than once, but even in confinement, he continued to write, composing some of his most important works in the solitude of a cell. What made Avicenna remarkable was not just his intellect, but his relentless belief in the power of the human mind to rise above circumstance. He lived in a world where superstition could outweigh science, where political ambition could silence reason, and yet he refused to surrender to ignorance. His mind was his fortress, and within it, he built a universe of ideas that would echo for centuries. One of his deepest insights was the relationship between reason and happiness. Avicenna believed that the ultimate goal of life was not pleasure in the shallow sense, but the perfection of the soul through understanding. The more the soul aligns with truth, the more fulfilled it becomes. Happiness, for him, was not something to be pursued in distraction and indulgence, but cultivated through the discipline of thought, the love of wisdom, and the practice of virtue. In a world where we are constantly bombarded with noise, his words strike a chord even now, that a calm, clear mind is worth more than all the fleeting pleasures we chase. Avicenna's thought was so far ahead of his time that, even today, some of his ideas sound strikingly modern. His emphasis on empirical observation in medicine foreshadowed the scientific method. His exploration of the mind-body relationship anticipated debates in modern psychology and neuroscience. His insistence that truth could be approached through multiple pathways, faith, reason, and experience, feels like an antidote to the polarized thinking of our age. And yet, for all his brilliance, Avicenna never saw himself as the final authority. Knowledge, he knew, was a living thing, growing, adapting, refining itself. He built on the works of those before him, and expected those after him to do the same. Perhaps that is why his influence is so enduring. He did not lock wisdom away in the past, he set it on a journey into the future. Avicenna died in 1037, at the age of 57, after a lifetime of relentless study and service. His death, like his life, was marked by a refusal to rest. Even in his final illness, he continued to read, teach, and dictate. For him, the life of the mind was not something to be paused, it was life itself. Today, when we look back on Avicenna's legacy, we see more than a historical figure. We see a reminder that the human mind, disciplined by reason and guided by purpose, can transcend the boundaries of time. His guide to reason was not a set of rigid rules, but a way of living. To question deeply, to observe carefully, to think clearly, and to act wisely. 1,000 years ago, he stood at the crossroads of science and philosophy, faith and logic, and showed that they need not be enemies. They could be allies in the great work of understanding what it means to be human. Avicenna's voice still speaks to us across the centuries. Do not be satisfied with borrowed truths. Seek your own understanding. Let reason be your compass, but do not forget